What is up guys, Fadeaway82, proud to bring you a weekly Rust update video. These are instructions for enabling music in the game. It has merged with the main servers, but it's not going to be enabled by default. If you guys want to take a look at the music, or listen to it rather, hit F1 and type music.enabled space 1, and you can start listening to it. Getting right into it guys, the fundamental gameplay changes you're going to notice this week in Rust that you want to be aware of is that arrows now have a much different way in terms of how they function. Arrows have their own specific damage type, which is to say they're different than bullets. They have a damage category now that specifies that they cannot damage structures, you cannot take down foundations, walls, doors, any building part with arrows any longer. That means arrow rating has now come to an end. Headshots are still the same, the multiplier on there hasn't changed with the exception of the crossbow. The crossbow now has parity with the bow and they have equal headshot damage values. The crossbow also has a slower deploy rate similar to the Nerf that was done on the pipe shotgun, so a loaded crossbow will deploy slower like the pipe shotgun, so you can't chain them together. The overall gunplay has been tightened up a lot in Rust, and damage is 100% predictable on every shot now, and that's because the way that the velocity travels out of the barrel is much more predictable. It's going to have max damage for a certain number of meters, and then it will fall off in a linear fashion from there. That will vary from weapon to weapon. You also ought to be aware this week in Rust that the shotgun Buckshot headshot damage multiplier has received a reduction. It's still an effective weapon, a great weapon, but the headshot values has gone down. Again, if you have a helm on, it's going to affect that, so that's something to bear in mind. The neck is no longer going to be considered a headshot, so that has been tweaked and functioned. If you guys are going to wonder how you can raid now the doors in early game, you're going to be able to do it with bean can grenades. Any type of explosive device will affect doors in a greater degree now. So that means that you can use the bean cans more effectively as a raiding tool, which is really what they should be there for. If you like using spears or melee weapons, they will still be a viable raiding option, so go ahead and start chucking them at the doors and breaking them on down. Mid-game melee weapons such as the mace, the cleaver, and the sword have received a reduction in cost, so you can craft them much more frequently now. It's going to cost hundreds of metal fragments less to craft those items, and this is going to be something, guys, that makes it more pronounced. You'll see those items used more often. Along with the changes to the way that the crossbows deployed less quickly and the way that the pipe shotties now deploy less quickly, it makes the melee combat feel a little bit more tense because you can't as quickly spam those items, and when somebody's coming at you with a mace, they start landing a couple shots. It's really difficult to start recovering from that. A lot of people are curious though, what is the next progression to the experience system, and Lord Helk himself has been playing the game to learn the experience system from the perspective of a player, and he's made some tweaks based off that. Overall, experience is going to be easier to gain earlier on this week in Rust. You're going to notice much more gain when players use tools that you use specifically for killing an animal, and that experience for smashing barrels is going to be still there, but only when you're in a close proximity to it. Speaking of barrels, you can now find items to craft the turret in the barrel, although they will be a very rare drop. In terms of drops from the barrels, they will also no longer drop the bolt or the AK in high quality very frequently. That will be a much less often found item in the game. But getting back to the experience system, the experience rate for gathering items is increased by half, and it will have less fall off at higher levels, and the overall experience that you're going to gain from others gathering nodes is increased as well. In terms of how players build this week in Rust, there's going to be some changes to the way that the tool cupboard works. Nothing super profound, but it no longer will utilize that socket method, and you can place tool cupboards closer to the edges of walls. Be careful when doing that though, guys. But overall, this is something that will allow you to have a little more flexibility with your build. In terms of some other changes to take note of this week, guys, small stashes now only cost 10 cloth. The roadside armor is going to cost you a bit more, and as I stated before, hoodies now have a greater protection value, so that makes them even all the more awesome. Another thing, guys, in Rust this week is things may be looking a bit different for you. Certain settings have been turned off, certain settings you might need to tweak in your options. So if things look like they're missing textures or look a little bit different, go ahead and go to your options, your graphics menu, and check it out. There's different bloom effects, and performance does seem to be a lot better. We took a look at the next progression for the bone armor, and we took a look also again at that bicycle stock that would reduce the recoil. As always, guys, really hope you enjoyed this week's Rust update video. I have a lot of fun making these. It's one of the highlights of my week, believe it or not. I don't know if that's good or sad, but watch out where you're swimming, guys, this week in Rust. Shit is lurking, and it ain't good.
Lost boys like me are free. to lost boys like me, and lost boys like me are free.
Alright guys, really hope you enjoyed this week's Rust update video. Peace.